Before Kylo Ren and the First Order built the Death Star 3 at, Starkiller Base, they had the original trilogy. Yes, the original trilogy, with a seemingly perfect end to a saga. That's right, I'm talking Return of the Jedi. At the time of the Super Nintendo generation, there was nothing better to me than Super Star Wars. Yeah, it's super alright. The original Super Star Wars, based on Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, the original Star Wars, kick-started this trilogy of games, and each game, for the most part, followed that trend after it. Action, platforming, unforgiving difficulty, yet possible to master, these games took good advantage of the capabilities of the Super Nintendo. Stereo sound, Mode 7 style 3D, and great animation for the detailed list of familiar enemies and characters of the Star Wars universe. Super Star Wars, the first game, was the hardest of the three because it didn't feature a continue password feature. Moving on to Empire Strikes Back, it got a little bit easier upon learning the ways of the Force from Yoda in the Dagobah scene. Super Return of the Jedi features great action, great platforming, and great controls. It gives you some gaming skill building as you progress through the game because you'll need to learn how to figure out the patterns and figure out your own actions throughout the gameplay. This game features a great sense of adventure following the key moments from the film. Nearly every action scene is represented here, from Jabba's sail barge and rescuing Han Solo, to the speeder bike chase on Endor and the final assault on Death Star 2. Of course, there's the final confrontation between Luke and Vader, as well as the battle against the evil Emperor Palpatine, and the Ewoks are represented here too, with 2 playable Ewok levels. Different main characters from the movie are represented in various forms throughout the game, each have their own gameplay type. Luke Skywalker is a Jedi Knight and the hero of the story. He features the most unique and complex gameplay style. Luke uses both his lightsaber and the Force, a mystical energy field created by all living things. In terms of gameplay, this means using Luke's lightsaber, which is a type of laser sword, for standard attacks and crouching attacks. Each character can do a double jump, but for Luke, it acts as another attack. Using the Force is a bit more complex. You have the choice to select one Force power at any time during gameplay. There's Force moves like Saber Throw, Heal, Vanish, Freeze. In my opinion, I stuck with Heal almost at all times. Heal allows you to take a portion of your Force gauge and give that to your health gauge, so you get some of your health back, and you can use that as long as you have some Force power left. The Force Heal ability comes in handy so much during boss fights, and it saved me quite a few times. The next characters, Chewbacca and later on Han Solo, control very similarly. They both use blasters, which upon finding a blaster pickup throughout the level, can be upgraded to a stronger gunshot. You begin with a laser, then you get a fire shot, you get a seeker missile, you get an ion gun, and then you get plasma finally. These are the same power-ups that Luke used in the original Super Star Wars at the beginning stages before he got his lightsaber. They can't use the Force, but they do have their own unique ability in place of the Force. Han Solo's unique ability is the bombs. You can throw them to do extra damage, but in order to restock those bombs, you'll have to find them as an item pickup throughout the level. Chewbacca doesn't have bombs. Instead, he has a Wookiee Rage attack where he spins around, hitting all enemies. It actually keeps you safe as you run into these other enemies. Chewbacca's ability is great because it recharges automatically over time. Chewbacca's attack does a good amount of damage and in some cases works better than Han Solo's bombs. Princess Leia is a bit more varied in this game. She has a unique gameplay type for each of her costumes seen throughout the film. In the early levels, she is disguised as the bounty hunter Boushh, and she fights more like Luke, minus the Force powers. So in those cases, I'd prefer to pick Luke. Later on, as a slave of Jabba the Hutt, she is more agile and can use a chain whip for an attack. She also has a special ability very similar to Chewbacca's Rage. I prefer to use Leia on the only stage that she is available for. Later on in Endor, she has abilities closer to Han and Chewie, and carries a blaster. There's a couple other characters left in this game, although they are used a little bit differently. There are 2 stages with Wicket the Ewok. They are short, challenging, chaotic stages with new types of enemies and a new gameplay mechanic. Wicket's combat is a ranged bow and arrow. Seems simple enough, but it does a lot of damage. Now you can use this bow and arrow to shoot into trees on the background, and then you can bounce off those arrows to reach higher ground, and you'll need to master this ability to progress through the level. You can also play as Lando Calrissian, as the pilot of the Millennium Falcon from the scenes in the movie. Lando is actually in charge on the assault of the Death Star 2 in this game, and I guess his co-pilot Nine Nub is still there too. One of my favorite aspects of this game that is shared with many classic platforming games is skill building. Yeah! In many of these types of games, platforming games that is, there is a learning curve. In most cases, you have to learn not only your character's unique skills and abilities, but also the enemies and boss battles. While a majority of this game is a platformer, it can throw you into a curveball by forcing you to play through different level types, such as the speeder bikes, Millennium Falcon, and the land speeder, which was oddly enough a scene that was not in the movie, and it's also the first stage. Why did they start a platforming game with a racing stage? Here's some tips and tricks for each level in this game, in order. Level 1 is a strange choice because it's a racing level in a land speeder. It's a good idea on this stage to use your boost mostly and only when you're jumping over the gaps. Be careful not to damage your speeder by hitting rocks. Thankfully, this stage is relatively short. In between each stage, there will be a brief cutscene usually showing an image or a slight animation from a scene from the film, along with some dialogue. Stage 2, outside Jabba's palace. Choose Luke, it will help you greatly. Remember, if you can play as Luke Skywalker, play as Luke Skywalker. And of course, press select to switch to your force heal ability and use that whenever you need to. Now this stage is the first platforming stage, and it's also the first stage where you can collect coins. As set in standard from Super Mario Bros., 100 coins will grant you an extra life, so grab as many of these as possible when you can. There is no time limit to stages in these games, so you can take your time to grab more coins. Oddly enough, not all the platforming stages have coins. On the top portions of this stage, in the entryway to Jabba's palace, you can grab a special item that allows a character to run faster and jump further. Use this to your advantage. If the boss proves too challenging, I'd recommend switching to Chewbacca for some ranged attacks. Stage 3, Jabba's palace. In this stage, I'd once again choose Luke Skywalker, but honestly, it's pretty even between the 3 character choices. Watch out for the Rancor pits on the floor. There's more than one of them. They will lead you to your death and may also spit out Rancors. You can double jump over them to grab a big heart piece, which will replenish some of your health. You might also be able to throw enemies into the pits. The boss is the Twi'lek, Bib Fortuna. Dewarawanga! Strangely, he has the ability to shoot lasers out of the tentacles on his head, the Leku. That's not canon. If you chose Luke, you can reflect his shots by blocking with your lightsaber. Stage 4, below Jabba's palace. I chose Luke and it worked well for me once again. There's a couple secrets here where you can walk through the walls to find a stash of goodies, including point doublers, which are represented by Darth Vader's helmet, health swords, which are basically like lightsabers, but they actually increase your health bar, and you can also find hearts and even extra lives, which are represented by your character's face. This boss is one of the easiest in the game. He constantly spits out smaller enemies, which will drop hearts, so you almost always have a lot of health. It's a bit of a chaotic fight, but the hearts drop should keep you going. Now up to this point, I've been playing the game on the hardest difficulty setting, Jedi mode. There are 3 difficulty settings in the game. This is where the game gets a bit out of hand in difficulty. The Rancor Pit. Yeah, the Rancor Pit, that scary monster underneath Jabba the Hutt's bed. This stage is really challenging, and unlike most of the other levels in the game, features a strange layout that kinda makes it hard to maneuver through. Just before you fight the Rancor boss, you can collect a checkpoint to continue from, represented by R2-D2. If you head up and then right, immediately after this last checkpoint, you can find a 1-up. Now this 1-up will always be there, so as long as you grab it each time, you can't lose. And to help you further, right before you fight the boss, in the same hallway, you can grab a few hearts and a few health swords to increase your life. I used Han Solo on the Rancor because of his powerful ranged bomb attacks. Save your bombs throughout this level for the boss. The next stage is Jabba's sail barge, outside. This stage features some of the trickiest platforming in the game, so be careful where you jump. There's also an R2-D2 checkpoint on the far right side of the first level. When you first make it to the top level of the sail barge, head to the left and jump on a smaller speeder. You will find many coins here, so make sure you get as much as you can to get some extra lives. Fun fact, the boss of this stage is an early concept design of the Rancor, which did not appear in the movie in this form. I usually choose Leia here, and then choose Han Solo for the boss. Leia is in her slave costume here from the scene in the movie, and has a Castlevania-esque whip attack and also a spin attack ability. There's a secret area here on the far right bottom level with some extra hearts. If you go higher up on the sail barge and then continue back to the right, there'll be an R2-D2 checkpoint. Jump up a little bit higher for a secret room with some extra lives and some other goodies that'll help you out. The boss is a very angry and dangerous Jabba the Hutt, who when you get there moves surprisingly fast, which is why you want Han's blaster for some ranged attacks. And don't forget his bombs. So this game skipped the entire Dagobah scene with Yoda and the ghost of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and went straight to Endor. And Endor begins with the famous, iconic speeder bike chase scene from the movie. It's a fairly simple stage, just dodge trees and shoot 10 scout troopers on their speeder bikes. Luke and Leia seem equal on this stage. In a cutscene, Leia encounters Wicket the Ewok, and he starts his own Ewok adventure. The two Ewok stages are fairly short. Stage 1 is a bit contained and easier, and Stage 2 will have water on the bottom, so don't fall in. You will have to master Wicket's bow and arrow attacks, as well as bouncing off the arrows when shot onto trees. There is a high amount of enemies here, but the game gives out many hearts. The bosses on both stages are pretty straightforward. Fun fact, the Stage 2 Ewok boss is actually based on a monster from the TV film Ewok Adventure Caravan of Courage, but now in Super Star Wars Return of the Jedi, you have to fight him as Wicket the Ewok. Luke Skywalker is on his own in this nighttime Endor stage. The key here is to reach the platform that spans the top of the level. Climb up the AT-AT walkers and onto floating platforms. This stage is simple if you don't fall off. The boss is a couple of giant droids and a ship. It's kind of a weird design, it almost looks out of place in Star Wars. As the Battle of Endor begins, we have a Millennium Falcon stage. With the Millennium Falcon piloted by Lando Calrissian and Nine Nub, you have to use your shield button to block incoming bombs, and then destroy a set amount of TIE fighters. You can also shoot those bombs as they come in. Next is what I consider the hardest stage in the game, the Endor Shield Bunker. You have a choice between 3 heroes. You can be Leia in a different form now. You can also be Han Solo. You can also be Chewbacca. Now for this stage I chose Chewie, but I think Han Solo works better for the boss. So when I died near the end of the stage, I restarted as Han Solo. This level's hard because of platforming and pitfalls, so if you learn your skills along the way, skill building, you should know how to jump and time it right. Luckily, there is a room halfway through this level that gives you a lot of extra blaster upgrades, but you have to be kind of fast to grab them, which is why I think Chewbacca's good, because he can use a spin rage, and the blocks are what contain the blaster power-ups. So Chewbacca's a good choice for the most part of this level. The boss here will also test your platforming skills, because you have to jump on falling blocks. I recommend using Han Solo for this boss fight because of his bombs. We switch back to Luke Skywalker's story as he boards the Death Star 2. This level's fairly easy, and in terms of design, it is similar to the inside of the sail barge level. There's 2 weird things about this stage. There are no coins for whatever reason. Also, when the boss appears on this stage, it doesn't play the boss music like it does in every other stage, so why are the coins and the boss music missing here? Also, the boss here is the same boss that Luke Skywalker fought on his last stage, those 2 droids. Why? Another Millennium Falcon stage with Lando and Nine Nub, and this one feels a little bit closer to Rogue Squadron. A different viewpoint and controls, yet you have the same goal. Defeat a set amount of ties. You have more freedom and you can actually move around. This level's pretty easy because all the ties you defeat drop hearts. Then we're on to another Death Star 2 stage with Luke Skywalker. This is the final platforming level in the game. The battle with Vader is disappointing and simple. Also, it's not too challenging. Why did they reduce the most iconic movie villain to a fight like this one? Then the next stage, which is only a boss battle where Luke Skywalker battles the evil Emperor Palpatine. And it's much more challenging than the Darth Vader fight. To fight Palpatine, you have to be fast. Dodge his Force Lightning because it will also destroy parts of the stage. So you have to be careful and remember what parts of the level have already been destroyed. The stage is designed like a small Smash Brothers arena, and there's actually a few Force pickups you can find along the way. Use those when you need to, and not all at the start. I found it easiest to attack Palpatine when you're both standing still on a platform, instead of when he's floating around. Dodge Palpatine's attacks and also the ground as this insane Sith Lord destroys the level around him. But this game's not over yet. Lando, and I mean the player, still has to pilot the Millennium Falcon inside the Death Star 2 and destroy it. This level is great looking because it has almost a kaleidoscopic effect. It's neat to look at and provides a first-person look through the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon, which makes it a little bit disorienting. At first, you'll probably bounce off the walls a few times, but I found that if you keep shooting your lasers toward the center of the screen, it'll actually keep you on track because it helps you know where the center of the stage is, and it'll keep your eyes fixed on the center, so that way you won't have to worry about bouncing off the ceiling or the walls of the Death Star 2. Now the problem I have with these two final stages inside the Death Star 2 aboard the Millennium Falcon is they're really long. Longer than the movies even. It almost starts to get boring and repetitive if you know what you're doing. If you mess up, you have to restart, and I'd probably find that incredibly frustrating. Once the Millennium Falcon destroys the core of the Death Star 2, there's an escape stage. When Lando's all clear and has blown up the Death Star 2, he returns to Endor to meet up with the other heroes, Luke, Leia, Han Solo, Chewbacca, the other rebels, and the Ewoks are there having a party! It plays a cutscene similar to the ending of the movie. They did a great job transitioning this scene to Super Nintendo. It even has Yub Nub for all you Ewok lovers. Before the credits roll, you get one final shot of the Jedi Force Ghosts of Yoda, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Anakin Skywalker, not the Hayden version. Altogether, the Super Star Wars Trilogy and Super Return of the Jedi on the Super Nintendo is an altogether memorable experience. I had a lot of fun replaying this game today for this review. I'd recommend this game to any advanced platforming game fan. Thanks for watching Happy Beard Games. Stay tuned for more. Bye! And may the Force be with you.